So, considering everyone's been talking about the Three Moon Sisters and their potential relationship with Nod Krai, I thought I'd dive back in, dick first, into the confusing and tangled web of machinations that belongs to the Fatui and actually Nod Krai itself. There is also going to be an unexpected guest that will make an appearance in this video. Many of us have all but forgotten about Varka, and the fact that he took 80% of Mondstadt's fighting force on some sort of expedition with an unknown objective. Which, let's be honest, if he's going to be taking 80% of Mondstadt's fighting force, he better have a damn good reason, because Mondstadt has been in a precarious position since the departure of the Grand Master of the Knights of Favonius. But what if I told you that Varka's mission very likely has to do with the truth of the world? What if I told you that we're liable to meet Varka and his team in Nod Krai? And what if I told you that the clash between Dottore and Varka might be closer than you think? And more importantly, what if Nod Krai has more to do with Project Stuja than anyone has dreamed of? But, as with all things, it's best if we start at the beginning. And the beginning starts with Nod Krai itself, so let's get into it. Knowledge about Nod Krai is rather thin in the game right now, likely because we haven't actually visited the location yet, but that doesn't mean we're completely left in the dark either. We know Nod Krai is a very dangerous and lawless place. There are no courts, and the only real power for order seems to be held by the Voynich Guild. This is somewhat surprising since there is a Fatui presence in Nod Krai, which we'll get into later. But it seems as if, you have a problem in Nod Krai, then you go to the Voynich Guild. According to Liben, they're incredibly generous and good at resolving issues, as not only did they get all of his stolen merchandise back, but then they also bought his entire stock. However, it seems that the Voynich Guild is likely only in the more established portions of Nod Krai, as the forests are where the Moonfrost Scions reside. It's also likely, in my opinion, that the Voynich Guild is a front for the Fatui Harbinger Pantalone. This would explain why Dottore and his subordinates don't seem bothered by their authoritative presence in Nod Krai, and also where the Voynich Guild would be getting their money from, as it's pointed out that Pantalone is a Fatui Harbinger, and he's most associated with the Northland Bank. Dottore, we find out from Mavwika, has also moved his subordinates to Nod Krai and are performing experiments of some kind. Knowing Dottore, these experiments are no doubt insanely fucked up. There is also another group within Nod Krai that seems separate from the two likely Fatui forces, and this would be the Sperenza. Now, information on the Sperenza is pretty thin. The only information we have on this group comes from an event NPC, Helka. According to her, the group's founder was an ex-adventurer named Katya. Apparently, Katya was a rather famous adventurer who traveled all around Teyvat, but eventually, due to injuries, she settled in Nasha Town, which is apparently where she started the group. It also seems that the Sperenza is a group dedicated to studying monsters and ancient ruins. Helka herself traveled to Notlan to study the monsters, claiming that Katya has watched over and taken in many of the children in the Nasha Town area. And then, of course, we do have our last group, the Frostmoon Scions. They are a mysterious group of people that live in the forests around Nod Krai, and it sounds like most people avoid not just them, but their moon deity statues as well. And Helka even claims that she's seen them performing strange magic. This falls in line with what we heard at the end of the Notlan Archon quest from Mavwika, that there are some within Nod Krai that use a power that predates the 7 elements in Teyvat. This is especially interesting, considering Notlan itself uses phlogiston, which also predates the 7 elements in Teyvat. Whatever the Frostmoon Scions use, it must be even stranger of a force than phlogiston for Mavwika to comment on it like this. The last thing of note in Nod Krai is that while there was once an ancient and prosperous civilization, it's all but fallen to ruins. Additionally, the Fatui seem to be moving construction material into the area, but to what end, no one is certain. So now that we've established the basics, let's move on to the theories of what's happening in Nod Krai, as well as who we might be liable to meet when we arrive there. We met Dottore in Sumeru, somehow one of the most attractive harbingers and simultaneously the most sadistic. Dottore appears to be experimenting to see if humanity can create a god. Now, Some of you might be saying that Scaramouche was more of a passing fancy, an experiment that Dottore sought to run to pass the time, so to speak, before gaining his ultimate goal, which was the Dendro and Electrognosis. But I think it goes deeper than that. In the Harbinger meeting, it's made clear that the Fatui knew exactly where Scaramouche was, and what experiments Dottore was performing alongside the sages at the Academia. If anything, this experiment seemed to be sanctioned, so it must have had some value to the Fatui's plan, perhaps even to Project Stuja. Now that we have learned of Nod Krai and of a people that can use a power that predates the Seven Element system, these people, I'm assuming to be the Frost Moon Scions, I believe Dottore is intending to create a new god. I believe the way this has been framed to the Frost Moon Scions is that Dottore is working to resurrect or awaken the Frost Moon, who has long since ceased to turn. This could be why Dottore is collecting moon fragments, like what we saw beyond the sky in Natlan. However, I believe Dottore is actually trying to craft a new god, one that will be under the Fatui's control. I also believe that this goal directly links back to Project Stuja, the collection of the Gnosis, and the Tsaritsa's plan for Teyvat. The inner workings of this plan still seem to be somewhat vague, but I believe that the ultimate goal of the Tsaritsa is to rid Teyvat of Celestia and change the fate of the world. Perhaps crafting a new god furthers this goal in some way. I mentioned the idea that Pantalone might hold power in Nod Krai through the Voynich Guild, but there is another Harbinger I believe we could meet in Nod Krai, and that is Sandrone. We know that Sandrone is skilled in the crafting of puppets, similar to Scaramouche in a sense, and I could see her being useful to Dottore's work here in Nod Krai. Some have speculated that we'll see Columbina in Nod Krai, but I believe she's going to be tasked with gaining the Pyronosis from Mavwika, and therefore it's more likely that we'll meet other Fatui Harbingers in Nod Krai. The true details of Dottore's experiments will likely be unveiled with time, and I have no doubt that he's also conducting experiments on the Frost Moon Scions themselves, but I do think that his ultimate goal is one of god creation, and honestly, it does make the most sense when we consider his actions from Sumeru. My second theory is that we will see that Nod Krai has connections both with the Abyss and Conria, specifically with the Crimson Moon Dynasty. We know that Arlecchino was subjected to the experiments that ran rampant during the Crimson Moon Dynasty in Conria, experiments which, even by Conrian standards, were deemed so cruel it led to the downfall of the Crimson Moon Dynasty. The point of these rituals were to try and summon descenders who could alter the fate of Teyvat. All that sounding kinda familiar? I believe that the Frost Moon Scions likely do similar rituals, but with the intention of either communicating with or worshipping the Frost Moon. It's also possible that these rituals could have a sacrificial component, the idea that the Frost Moon Scions are trying to wake up or save the Frost Moon. While Arlecchino's backstory still isn't fully revealed, like where she came from before going to the House of the Hearth, I think it's likely that some of the Crimson Moon Dynasty followers escaped from Conria, or at the very least their rituals and experiments did. If this is the case, then we could meet someone in Nod Krai who has similar powers to Arlecchino, though perhaps more cryo-aligned. Or it could be possible that Arlecchino's birthplace was in fact Nod Krai, and she was forced to undergo rituals that were descended from the Crimson Moon Dynasty. If this is the case, then it's likely that these were conducted in an effort to perfect the experiments and rituals already performed by the Frost Moon Scions. It's also entirely likely that these rituals were influenced by the Abyss, or perhaps by one of the five sinners of Conria, but that's a theory for another day. For my last big theory on what we'll be seeing in Nod Krai, this has to do with our favorite missing Grand Master, Varka, and the expedition that he's led out of Mondstadt. We know that Varka took about 80% of the fighting force from Mondstadt at the start of his expedition, and that it's been likely a little over a year since they've returned home. However, why Varka has left on his expedition has never really been explained. We know that the Hexen Circle has its roots in Mondstadt, Alice being someone who lives or did live in Mondstadt full-time, and she trusts Mondstadt with the protection of her daughter, as well as Reindotir leaving Albedo in Mondstadt. It's likely that Nicole or perhaps one of the other Hexen Circle members revealed something to Varka, causing the Grand Master to set out in search of something. We know the expedition has been long and gone to many places. Varka met with Mavwika and the two even had a drinking contest, one which Varka apparently lost. It also seems as if Varka traveled with Capitano for some time, each leader respecting the other. Last we heard of Varka, he was in the northernmost reaches of Tevat and appeared to be traveling to Nod Krai to follow some sort of lead. I believe that Varka is investigating the abyss and the truth of the world of Tevat, among maybe other things. This search has led him to Nod Krai, where it's very likely he will meet up with us as the traveler. I believe that there is something sinister going on in Nod Krai, as it's mentioned that there's been an increase in abyssal activity in the area. Whether this is due to Dolte's experiments or something else, we can't yet determine. But I believe it will ultimately be Varka who will help us overcome the danger we're going to face in Nod Krai. I also believe that we'll finally get some answers about what Varka's been looking for and what he's found. And this will actually inform us as we move further into Snezhnaya and closer to the ultimate confrontation we must make towards the end of the game. Okay everyone, I hope you guys liked this video. I tried to keep it a reasonable length, but a lot of research went into this one, so hopefully I kept things concise enough. If you like this video, then don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with a friend so I don't feel like I'm screaming into the void. Also, if you want your name in the credits to help support me, you can join my $1 a month Ko-Fi membership. And, as always, may the wind bless your travels.